And on today's episode of All Things Conflict with me, your host, Maria Arpa, I'm delighted to introduce my guest, Chris Baker, who is a mentor, facilitator, and motivational speaker, turning trauma into positive change and transformation. He has started a business called Aspire to Change, where he mentors young people and helps them to tread a new path and avoid the path that he took as a young person. Absolutely fascinating man with lived experience and a very, very big heart. So let's go. Wow, Chris, amazing. Thank you so much for making the journey up to Peterborough so that we could record together in studio. It's always so much nicer when we do things in person.
Yeah.
And welcome to All Things Conflict.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's fantastic. It's an honour. We heard you speaking at I think it was a podcast called Life After Prison.
Yeah.
And, you had some really important things to share and important things to say. So we were very quick to find you. And and here you are. So maybe you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Chris Baker. So I was on that podcast. They invited me ages ago, but then we eventually got it filmed. And yeah, you said you see it, and then now I'm here and we can talk about what you liked from it.
Yeah. So I think that there's, firstly, you're a person with lived experience.
Yeah.
You've lost your arm. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that sort of history and background first.
Yeah, so when I was young, my dad used to come and he'd always be in like brand new BMWs, and it fascinated me where he got these cars from because my mum had an old banger, and he'd take me in these cars, and then he'd take police chases, and he wouldn't stop for them, and I was like, I don't know, it was just fascinating the way he would drive, the way he would act. He was quite aggressive. He was the first person I ever see use violence, and it got me into like cars and things like this. And cut a long story short, when he left, as I got older, I started getting into these cars and stealing cars, stealing bikes. And one day I was on a bike that I shouldn't have been on, being chased by the police, and that's how my arm ended up lost. I crashed, and it ended up resulting in me losing my arm after coming out of a coma. And yeah, my arm was there, but it just stunk like rotten flesh. And I just remember them saying, like everyone there and all my family are there, and then they're looking at me and they're waiting for me to say something, just come out of a coma, just to see if I was like permanently brain damaged. And then 2 weeks later, they come to me and said it has to come off, and that's how it happened. But like, I always refer to the childhood experience because that's what, like, them things there was what set the foundations. Not saying it's an excuse, but it kind of, them patterns and them experiences what led me to think that these behaviours were normal, and then I ended up costing me an arm in the long run.
So that's really important and really important. I want to highlight, you're not saying, oh, here's an excuse and feel sorry for me because, of this. But I think that the things that we're shown as children, what we learn from them are not necessarily what the world intends us to learn. So I heard you say that your dad would show up with new cars and you were fascinated because your mum had an old banger.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was impressive, I guess. It made an impression on you. I might take some guesses here. I'm guessing that part of you thought, well, that looks much more glamorous than what I have. So how do I get that in life?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your dad intended?
I think that he was acting how he felt, not with intention. I think knowing him now and knowing the life he had, a lot of his behaviours were generational traumas himself. Grew up in care, in the 80s or whatever it was, as a black kid. You can imagine what goes on in them places, them times, as we know. So he just acted out what he'd seen. And that's why I like look at it like I would never. I'm going to be the one to break that generational pattern because he was doing what he had learned without even really thinking of the consequences of how this can impact these kids. But again, the information then was a lot different to what it is now. So, but yeah, he was just acting out what he'd been through.
So he probably wasn't even really conscious or aware of what he was putting on show to you.
I think you would know that what's right or wrong, but I think sometimes the feeling and the behavior is so ingrained, you don't even acknowledge what's wrong or right.
Yeah, I think the way I would address that is by saying that what happens is we normalise things, even though one part of us knows. The majority of us have just normalised it.
Yeah, I think that's what he was like. But I don't, like I say, I don't really know, but I just assume from who he was and how he was. I was still young when he left, so I don't know him really as a person, but I just know that he probably was acting out a lot of the stuff and normalising the behaviours he'd been through himself.
And so then how did that trickle down to you?
So like I said, I see him be violent, see the neighbours be violent as soon as he went to prison when I was 10. They come one time, my mum's arguing with her and the lady, and if she's fighting because the lady's being racist to me, and her boyfriend comes down with this big kitchen knife and he was just about to like stab my mum, and the police come and all these things happening. Like there was a lot of other incidents where men were just violent and negative, and I just always see these behaviours, and I just thought, no father's in prison at this stage, and I'm just thinking this is how men act, and I suppose I kind of like just like you say normalized it and grew up just acting at what I've seen, really, with no care for my actions or other people.
Yeah, so it's a dog eat dog world.
Yeah,
This is how you defend yourself.
yeah,
You know, things can be okay for a while, but if trouble arises, then every man for himself.
yeah, and you deal with conflict with violence, not
Mm-hmm.
with resolution, or like your emotions, anger come up. You don't like process them. You use
Act them out.
violence,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Or sometimes it might be the opposite. I think when I look back, I think sometimes you might get withdrawn, like when anger comes, but majority of the time it'd be violence. I think, and when I look at it now, it's like my stress response was like either violent or withdrawn. It's like fight or flight. It's like that internal dialogue where it's always on because I'm going through so much trauma. I think my response would either be violence or like like go within myself, and that's how it pretty much was for me.
So then that trickles down to you, and then you grow up, and then you just start repeating some of those things,
Yeah,
even though I imagine part of you didn't want to, because I think you wanted to break that cycle, didn't you?
not at that stage,
Not
because
at that
at that
stage.
stage I didn't even understand what was going on. I
No.
didn't really understand emotions. I didn't understand uh, trauma. I didn't understand none of this. It wasn't. I was just told to man up. It was a lot different then. So it was just. I was just the naughty kid, bad, bad, bad kid. So I just continued to act how people would put these labels on. So like you're so naughty, you don't listen, like, and you're gonna end up in prison. Do you know what I mean? These
Yeah.
things were said, and this is what happens. I just was getting in trouble, fighting, selling drugs, stealing, all of that, and then just continued. Took and for years that was just in the fight, and I didn't even really. I knew it was not like good behavior, but I just didn't. I suppose I didn't have no hope in any other aspect of my life. I just was just acting how I felt, I suppose. And
And also acting up to the labels, because one of the things I found in the years that I've been working in this field is when we give people a label and we say it often enough, they will actually act to the label.
mm-hmm,
I've seen that in schools so often. I worked with one group of year nines in a school that has got shut down and then reinvented itself. And literally about 50% of the staff had labelled this group of year nines as evil. to their faces. They said to me, "We're called evil." They tell us we're evil.
God.
And I witnessed that being said. So, it really did go pear-shaped. One of the young people in that year group in the summer actually went out on a spree and killed somebody.
Oh my God. Because you're constantly affirming to them, you are this, you are this, you are this. And it gets, I suppose it seeps into them, and it's like, well, that's what I am, that's who I am.
And then what I heard you say was that, then you felt hopeless, you lost hope. Mm-hmm. And then if the world's telling you that, there is no hope, because as young people, we're reliant on the elders to pull us up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Because I feel like I was so always told that from young. When any other men told me anything, it was always negative, or there was a reason behind their actions, and it was like a manipulation. I didn't have no positive role models. When I finally met someone that was positive, that told me good things, that pulled me the other way. So it definitely contrasts. Like,
it does work.
It does, just by affirming someone that you believe in them and you can spark hope back into them.
Yeah, because I grew up really poor, right? I grew up in Islington when it was a slum. My house was declared unfit for human habitation. Right, it was a poor upbringing in the slums of London as they were then. And but we had a friend of the family that we called Auntie Pat, who lived in Knightsbridge. I mean, I was later to find out that she was actually a housekeeper for one of these big posh houses in Sloane Street. Yeah. But as a kid, we used to spend Christmas and bank holidays at Auntie Pat's place, right? And she had wall-to-wall carpet and, and whatever. So I had an image of how life could be. Does that make sense? I had an actual thing in my life, a role model, if you like, or somebody who was not living in the slums, right? Yeah. And so I was able to go, I want that, not this. And I think that had a huge effect on my ability to get out the ghetto.
Yeah. So seeing the flip side of what life could be like. Yeah.
If we went to Auntie Pat's and we went anywhere, it was a taxi. I mean, we couldn't afford a taxi. Do you know what I mean? She would just hail a black cab in the street.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I had a tangible experience that I could literally focus on.
Did they also like help you to get to that stage, or was it just the vision of that?
It was the visual of that. Although I do remember, I think as a kid, so Auntie Pat had no children of her own, so she paid for me to have dance lessons and music lessons that I wouldn't have had. And although I never really took those further than my teen years, because I went crazy as a teenager, I rebelled against everything. It was still other tastes of how life could be. Does that make sense? Yeah. Tastes of refinement that I would never have been exposed to.
Yeah, and you think that definitely contributed to?
I definitely would say that, as you said, that you finally met someone who had a positive impact.
Yeah.
That it was like, okay, that's where I'm going. I'm not staying here.
Yeah, because the guy that I was referring to, he's also like success. And when I tell people this, it sounds kind of like contradictory, because I met him in prison, but he went to Harvard. He was in for like tax. Most intelligent person I ever met, and he was like, is rich, but he also just knew how to bring the best out of people because he's been in leadership and big roles. And he would just talk to me in a way that made me feel better about myself and encouraged, like, and saying things like, I'm proud of you. And like, he read my story, and he's like, you could become a speaker, you could have a company that helps people, like you could open a CIC, and I didn't even know what that was then. And he's like, you could do so much with this story, but yet you're just here blaming the world, like like there's so much for this. And that definitely gave me hope, because I'd never, after losing my arm, I never really knew what, I was just like a ship with no captain. I didn't know where I was going, like just hitting into everything, just no ambition, no drive. And when someone gives you a tangible goal and they show you how you can achieve it, like you say, it's just like, all right, let's go.
That's amazing. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
talk about, meeting this guy at a crossroads in life.
yeah, and the thing is, like, people would say, "Why are you talking to him?" And like, because he's like quiet, he's not like that, and like people would say things or whatever. And we met. We was working in the same office, and there was another prisoner that kept bullying him. And at this stage, I was like on the cusp of getting better, but not fully reformed. And I wouldn't like. I had to say to this guy like, "Stop doing that," yeah. And then in the end, we took had an argument with the guy that kept bullying him, kind of thing. And then I think he took a light to the fact that I'd done that for him, and it was like, and little did I know, because I didn't even know who he was. I just didn't like that, and it ended up he was this guy, and then he helped me, and it was like that wouldn't have happened if he didn't see that.
And a lot of it came true, didn't it? Haven't you? You
Yeah,
become a speaker and
yeah. He see things in me before I even see them in myself, or help me to have the confidence to pursue them, I suppose.
And
Yeah.
so, what motivates you to do all this? I mean, clearly it's good for you and it's good for your life, but you could have done other things that weren't helpful to other people to be good for you. So there's obviously something driving you now, something in you that actually wants to make sure that kids don't go down the same path.
He helped me to change, and I see the power in someone. When you invest in someone, how much you can change their life. And then I've been doing this work, and I see actually I can really get to the hard to reach kids quite easily without even like just by relatability and having an impact on them. And it's like that means a lot. And when you've done so many bad things in your life and hurt so many people, you can never change that. But maybe in a selfish way, maybe I can help enough people that I've helped more than I've hurt. And then maybe that can tip the balance back a bit, in a sense. So I enjoy seeing the kids start changing their ways, challenging themselves, being a better version of themselves. But in a selfish essence, it's like, it's making me feel better about the bad I've done, maybe, if I'm honest. And obviously the impact it's having is great.
Yeah, because
You know what I
you
mean?
can watch something in front of you transforming.
Like, and then this is how I knew what he felt when I've started doing the work that I've been doing. I feel like he's got money, he's got everything, but what he was doing, investing in me, and it was like, I remember when I got out, he got out before me, and then when I see him, and at that stage when I first met him, I didn't read, and he encouraged me to read. He said, "You can't be an author if you don't read." Started reading. When I got out, and he said to me, "Whenever you read and you don't know a word, read the dictionary." And I was like, all right. And then when I got out about a year after him, I went and met him in his office, and he was like, just looking, he's like, your vocabulary's changed. You're like, because obviously I used to speak a lot more like, I don't know, street, shall we say. And he was just like there smiling, and now I get what he was doing. Like for him, it's like that giving back to see someone change is what I see in these kids as well, which is so rewarding. And it makes you feel good.
It is. And I think it's two things. I think, yes, it is good for you because it does. I
It's
mean,
like
you
having a
said
purpose as well, in
yeah,
a way.
you said, oh, it, helps to sort of balance out some of the things that you've done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also a way of making amends, isn't it? Because we can't necessarily always go back and make amends to the actual individuals on a transactional basis, but you can actually make amends to society.
Yeah.
And so that sounds to me as if that's part of it. But
Definitely.
the other part of it is setting kids on a path. It's like redoing your own childhood if that guy had come in when you were 10 or 12.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're saying like what that guy did for me, I could do that for a young person, not when they're an adult, but when they're still young and impressionable.
Yeah. And I want to do it on as big a scale as possible, as many as I can help. Why not?
So how do you do that? So give me some actual details.
I have a company, and we got people with lived experience, so that can vary. And we mentor. So I brought a couple kids with me today. They wanted
Yeah.
to come. So we mentor them, and we also do workshops in schools. So I got workshops on. I go and do an assembly on my story, and then we'll have workshop on consequence of county lines, building resilience, knowing your worth. We got a 12-week program that we do where we look at ACEs, emotions, fitness, nutrition. We got a recruitment company that we collaborated with who come in and teach you about recruitment and using AI to find a job, which is quite innovative. And then that's in collaboration with the council in our area. There's a few things we're doing, just getting bigger out and it's getting better.
So it sounds quite holistic, it's giving, sounds to me as if you're giving kids the education that's missing from the national curriculum.
I think it's everything that, because everyone says, what was your thing, that your light bulb aha moment? And it's like, it wasn't, it was multifaceted. For me, I met this guy who sparked hope. Then I started reading. Then I got into fitness. I done CBT. I done meditation. Like, there was not just one thing that pulled me up. So I think if I didn't look at the emotions, then I probably wouldn't have been able to do the other. Do you know what I mean? I think all of them are as important as each other. So that course incorporates all of them, and the workshops looks at consequences of certain things and helps them to build resilience and know your worth. And yeah, and it's really it's getting a lot busier, and more importantly, like, I feel like we're seeing a lot of changes in behaviours and mindsets, which is good.
Yeah, because it's not that difficult with young people, is it? I mean, I know people say it is, but if, like you can actually make that connection, then, I mean, the one thing I know about young people is they keep forgiving adults.
Yeah.
They forgive adults over and over again because they desperately want to be held and listened to and guided. And if what I get the sense that you're able to make that connection, and then it's not that difficult. I mean, you're battling their external influences, you're battling other stuff, and I'm going to come on to the ACEs score and trauma and all that stuff. But you can actually, it's possible to get a young person to build some trust and take baby steps out of what they find themselves in if you do it at a young enough age.
Yeah, I agree. You can do tremendous work. And what I find can be difficult is, as good as the work you do, depend on the environment you're taking them back to.
Yeah.
So like, I take you from an environment that's negative, and I'm not saying any specifics, but, and then I do some great work with you, a 12-week course, a day-to-day mentoring for 4 hours, and then I drop you back, and it's like, how well does my work last in that environment? So I think it's quite hard in that sense, because you're trying to balance the two, but they do change, they do listen, and they will, like you say, work on it. But yeah, it can be difficult for that reason.
Well, I mean, some of the environmental stuff can be like a magnet, can't it? I mean, you're not going to get transformation out of one course.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, plop them back into a traumatic environment.
Yeah, or friend groups that are negative, and sometimes I don't think like screens, I think they play a massive part of gaming, all this, like that dopamine constantly rewarding you. And then when you're saying, come on, let's go gym, like, well, I don't want to go gym when I've got to put in hard work to get a result, and I can sit on a computer and get that dopamine or feel good about it through that way. And it's like, because that's, anything fast is not worth it. But it's hard because computers and screens, I feel like, they're making kids struggle to get up every morning. Like, a lot of kids can't get up in the mornings, and from what I see.
Absolutely. Well, there is a sort of movement, isn't there? I think it's early days to stop, phones in schools, etc. I think they managed it in Australia, but it didn't get anywhere here yet. I mean, hopefully people aren't going to give up. Because I tell myself, maybe foolishly, but I tell myself that in 10, 20 years' time, we will look back and say, what were we doing giving these things to kids? Because if you watch that film, the social networks, all those people on that film who were all the founders of this stuff all say, "Oh, I wouldn't give it to my kids."
Yeah, I think Steve Jobs openly said that,
not
didn't
giving
he?
it to my
He
kids.
said that I would never give my kids a screen or something like that. I'm sure it was Steve Jobs who said that.
I think they all
He's
said
like
it on that film. I think they all said it.
And that should be the red flag that you need.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like
they know everything about it, and they say it's not good for their kids. So
just like now we would think it's preposterous to smoke on an aeroplane, whereas when I was young, everyone smoked on aeroplanes. Hopefully we would look back and go, God, that was madness. What on earth were we doing?
Yeah, I can.
That's if we aren't all like got AI implants in our brains by then. But
No, thank you.
But we've talked a lot about environment, and we touched on ACEs, which I'm a really big fan of, and trauma and trauma healing. And maybe you could talk a bit about that, because when we had a brief conversation, and I was really it really lit me up that you were into that, and you were you knew about it, and you were enacting it.
Yeah, I just feel like for me, ACEs were a massive contributing factor to my offending, and I'm not saying it's an excuse. Never would I say it's an excuse, but studies in prison, you can see I think it's 84% of prisoners have at least one or more, and 49% have got 4 or more, and then you got in the community it's nowhere near that. I think it's 9% have got 1. So it's much less. I can't remember the exact numbers, but in the community, but in prison, it's much more prominent. And I was like, this must be something to do with this. How we all got ACEs and we're all in prison. And then when I looked at ACEs and they're saying that it makes it harder with emotions, well, how many prisoners are in control of their emotions? And it's like, okay, and then your stress response system will be active and it becomes maladaptive and toxic stress. And I'm like, these are and you're more likely to engage in risk-taking behaviour or take substances and all these things. I'm like, well, this is thing. And when I started understanding about myself and the things that I went through and how I may be using that and making bad choices because of this, or as an excuse or whatever I was doing, it was like, all right, once I had that understanding, for me, I've never been back to prison since. So it's like, well, this enlighten everyone, and then give them that same thing and give them that same education, and see if they can gain control of it. Because if you're subconsciously acting out an emotion from a trigger from trauma, and you're using a coping mechanism that you're not even aware of, then maybe you're less in control of it than you think. And people that I find that it's not really looked at like that. No, you don't get screened when you go into prison. Well, not all the time. They do studies occasionally, but not every time you go into prison are you screened. I think that should be mandatory. And then there should be ACE awareness courses, but there isn't. And I think it's a great starting point to look at reducing offending if we look at how these are impacting people. But a lot more people now are starting to get into ACEs or looking at how this could be used to reducing reoffending, but it never has been when I've been in prison.
No, I remember when I was introduced to it, and just to sort of back up a little for our listeners, so the ACEs score is a study that was conducted over many years, and hundreds of thousands of people took it, and originally it was 10 questions, but it's been expanded now, I think, to 20.
I think it was that.
And there's a couple of other versions of it. And it's a set of questions that are just yes/no answers.
Yeah.
And they're things like, before the age of 18, did you ever witness one parent hitting another parent? Or did you ever worry that there wasn't enough food in the house?
Person in prison, or sexual abuse.
So it's just yes/no questions. And what they found is people with four or more yeses
are much more
have adverse outcomes.
Oh, you're 20 more times likely to go to prison.
Yeah.
I think your increased risk of heart disease and cancer and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, so it's every part of your life. Health.
Yeah, because your stress response system's always activated, and it's it becomes this toxic stress. And I'm not a professional, but it say that it starts like causing inflammation, and this can do all these things. But what I was more concerned about in mine is like the emotional side, the risk-taking behaviors, and how do you end up in prison from it? And it's like, but no one talks about it in prisons. Like, there's a lady that does great work on it. I forgot her name. She's from America, and she talks about it everywhere she goes. But like, there's no one actually in prisons doing work on it with prisoners. When I was in prison, maybe there is now.
It doesn't have a huge amount of recognition in the UK either.
No.
It's been much more kind of not accepted, but much more widely used in America, because I've done some work out there. And actually, interestingly enough, and this is a whole other side of the ACEs score, because it does recognise, or it does help to alert you to the fact that these things will have had an impact that you're going to carry through your life. But I did a workshop in New York with legal aid lawyers and social workers. It was a 2-3 hour workshop on trauma, with someone I'd just met. So I met this guy who was interested in trauma and done a lot of work with young people. He said, "Oh, let's just do something together." And we put the ACEs questionnaire out while we were doing the workshop, and we said, no names, nothing, just tick the whatever, and when you get your number of how many yeses, just write it on an anonymous piece of paper and throw it in the envelope.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any names, but these were legal aid lawyers and social workers, and almost 80% in the room had 4 or more yeses.
Oh dear.
They talk about wounded healers.
Yeah, they're the people. That's crazy.
Yeah. So I have a thing about. So there's one thing about looking at trauma from the perspective of people ending up in prison, people ending up, in bad health or all the rest of it. But I also would like to look at the trauma of people who take jobs where they have power over other people.
Yeah. So maybe like a way of they gain back their control.
Yeah. So some people will end up in a hopeless position, and some people will take control.
Yeah. That would explain some of the people in there.
I don't need to tell you, do I?
yeah, that would explain some of
could even that could just go unsaid, but we know what we're talking about.
That would explain some of the stuff in there, yeah, for sure.
So because trauma, there's no way of denying that trauma plays a huge part in our outcomes in life and the path we're going to take. I think that in other aspects, like me talking about, Auntie Pat, those things have influences as well. So I think it's a number of factors, but it's pretty much, for me, it's very clear that if someone experiences trauma, and serious trauma, violence in the family, sexual abuse, alcoholism, addictions, all those kinds of things, where the normalization of those things becomes how the child sees the world.
Yeah.
And those things never get addressed. Like, they don't get addressed, they don't get talked about, they don't get even kind of thought about. And then that's all being suppressed, and then we need to cover it up.
And
so
it manifests into
so we either become really high achievers, high functioning, or fall into crime, or addictions, or all sorts of obsessions and all sorts of things, all sorts of neurological responses as well. Then and it goes completely unaddressed. It's going to take you down at some point, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, even if you're using it to achieve success, it will manifest in other ways negative in your life.
Or big burnout, or something like that. Yeah,
no, I agree.
And so the question is, how can we talk about these things?
I don't know, because it's quite hard, because some people won't talk about it when there's shame attached, or depending on what the trauma is. If there's shame attached, then shame's a hard and emotional to just come out and talk about. Some people don't want to talk about things that are shameful to them. But like, I think if people are having conversations and you can relate to it, then it definitely, you can say, I can relate to that. And you can then maybe talking to other people or to therapists or whatever it is, and however, you know what I mean? But I think when it's been buried for so long through secrecy and silence, then to go and talk to someone about it, if it's really a traumatic event that's got a lot of shame attached, it's quite, it takes a lot of courage, and it's not as that easy, but it can be done. And I think for me, it started with a therapist, then it started understanding myself, reading, learning, and then talk to anyone now. Stand on your podcast, talk about it. But no, I think it's a gradual process, and it takes time. Yeah.
But it was education, wasn't it? It was being educated. It was having somebody open a door that you didn't know existed and say, walk through this door. And then what that did was it inspired your natural curiosity.
I think,
and you went on a learning journey.
Yeah, and I think the things that were shameful, I think empathy. Mm-hmm. When you're talking to someone about things that are shameful or like really, a lot of shame attached to them for you, if they're met with empathy, then shame can't coexist, can it? Because like that's someone taking in your darkest moments and being empathetic towards how you feel about that, and shame don't exist then. But if it's met with judgment, then it gets worse. So for me, I think it was when I shared my story with that guy that I told you about, first of all, for him to meet with empathy and no judgment at all, and still put his neck on the line, or not neck on the line, but support me to be a better version of myself. That was like, wow, like I've not had that from a male in my life. So then I was like, okay, now that inspired me and encouraged me to be a better version of myself.
I think it's so important. It's really interesting because I've been doing this work a long time, and and I really thought I knew what non-judgment was. I really believed that this work teaches you that and all the rest of it. And then I met a guy who ran a nightclub, and he shot people and been shot, and he'd been round the block a lot, and he was using his club to try and bring the kids from different postcodes together. He was really like, he was doing, reform in a really fantastic, very street way, but very effective. And we really kind of became, he used to call me his white mum, but we were a very unlikely pair. But he taught me I used to shadow him because he said, for every hour I spend having to learn your dialogue roadmap stuff, you've got to spend the same amount of time watching what I have to deal with on the road.
Yeah.
And I think in the end I learned more from him than he did from me.
You both learned.
Yeah.
Was both learning.
I think he gave me more than I gave him. But he really showed me, because I saw stuff, right? I saw absolute stuff. And I learned, don't judge it. Just don't judge it, because you just don't know what these people have been through. You've no idea. No idea when people are at rock bottom, how they will survive. And would they do the same things if they led my life? Probably not.
Yeah.
But would I do the things they're doing if I led their life? Maybe.
Yeah.
We're all capable of it.
Yeah, that's true. That is definitely
And so
true.
I really learned, judge nobody, because every human being is dark and light.
Yeah. Yeah. There is no light without dark, and there is no dark without light. Yeah, it's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you're right when you say that. Like, everyone's capable of everything, and like we've touched on, the upbringing is so important to where that goes, and how your life pans out. Not saying it's the only reason, but like it definitely is a massive contribution.
It has a massive impact, and it's something about that. So what I've learned is, when kids witness things or they're part of something, I met some people. I met a woman in New York who grew up in a crack den, right? Yeah. So how was her life going to turn out? When kids witness things, it's not so much that they're witnessing them, because the world's full of terrible stuff, right? Even if you're the most privileged person in the world, you're still going to experience things, right? It's who's educating that child in what lens to see it through?
Yeah.
That's, I think, what makes the difference. Who's guiding and mentoring to say, that's not normal, or that's, you have to look at this way, so that we're educating and helping a child to understand, because otherwise we've no idea what they've internalized.
Yeah.
How does that land for you?
So who was looking for me after the stuff that I went through, do you mean?
Yeah, well, if you went through stuff, or I went through stuff, or whatever, did you have anybody that said, take a step back from that? That may be what your life is going through, but that isn't normal, or that isn't how the world works, or that is how the world works. It's what matters is the lens we give children to look through.
No, because it was a bit different then.
Yeah.
It was like, it was, you need to man up. Like,
Yeah,
it was more
that's
that
the sense. So that was your lens.
Yeah.
Man up.
And
man up.
the lady that I was talking about, I forgot her name, Nadine Burke-Harrison, she says similar thing to you actually. It's really important that with these kids that have gone through ACEs, because there's a massive, she thinks there's a massive misdiagnosis of ADHD, and it's actually childhood trauma, she says. And she says, the way we look at these is like, they should, if we can nurture them from a young age, after that, we can stop them going down bad paths.
Absolutely.
And that's pretty much what you're saying. It's like the lens they see it, the nurturing, the guidance we give them. And I suppose when it was for me, it was like, we didn't really talk about things like that then. I know it's only like 25 years ago, but it wasn't like, oh, you've gone through this, or it wasn't as like much support there is for kids now. It was more like, you got to be a man, man up. And you try and man up when you've got loads of trauma behind you. It doesn't end
it's
up
got to go out.
unless you've got the right guidance, like you say.
And if it's not leaking out through violence, it's going to leak out in your own personal health. It will come out through the organs of your body.
Yeah, mood disorder, depressions and things like this. A lot of people have from ACEs as well, don't they?
Yeah.
A lot of mood disorders. So, I think, and it shows it doesn't matter what age you are, the right guidance can change your life.
Absolutely.
Because I'm living proof of that. Like, once someone believed in me and guided me, it was a total different life for me. And it has been ever since, really. And
now you're paying that forward.
Yeah.
And looking at young people and saying, actually, if I could do that for someone a bit earlier.
Exactly. It's that guidance, that lens. If you can start seeing the life through a better lens, then you ain't going to end up in the cells or in prison or even worse. And
so when I talk to you, as someone who's been through shit, you know what I mean, and come out the other side, I sit with somebody. What's interesting for me is I sit with someone I had total confidence ain't going back there.
Nah, no way. Never. I couldn't.
And yet you could have someone who's sleepwalked their way through prison, supposedly ticked all the boxes, done their sentence plan, come out the other side, and you could just know that none of the work you're describing ever took place. And it's 50-50 at best, whether they're going back there.
But then you give them a purpose and give them a bit of awareness, then I believe that they probably wouldn't go back. If you've got something more meaningful and something where you're having an impact and you've worked on yourself, which is always an ongoing battle, but like you understand yourself a bit better, you're a bit more self-aware about it. I think most people can come out of that. I have to believe that, otherwise it's not, you know what I mean? I do believe that you can change.
Yeah, but I can feel it in your energy. I can feel everything about you, that there's something in you that knows. That's the only way I can put it. You know.
Yeah. And I just hope other people can do that for themselves as well. Because prisons are overcrowded and like too many people in there hurting people. And I read that in a book, and The Body Keeps the Score. You probably read it. But he says, but healed people can heal people, which is the benefit as well. And absolutely. I believe in that too.
So we're coming to the end of our time together, which I must say, this has been a really lovely conversation. It's, we've been back and forth and just kind of, I don't know, I felt a flow between us, which I've really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And if you had one last thing to sort of end this on that you would want maybe young people to hear, or parents to hear, or what would you want to? How would you want to end this podcast with something that's just from your heart?
Your past doesn't have to define you. Your actions today do.
Oh, perfect. I love that. It's absolutely true.
Of course.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
This time together.
It's been great.
A joy.
Thank you.
Thank you.